Hello everyone, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. We have a great show for you today. We get you ready for the 2020 Iowa Caucuses. We'll tell you everything you need to know, what's at stake for the candidates. Also, John Kerry heard milling a run, Tom Perez stacking the DNC against Bernie, the unfiltered thoughts of some Bloomberg people trying to switch things up a little bit. We'll also talk about Senator Joni Ernst saying the GOP could weaponize impeachment immediately if the Democrat wins the White House. So, good try, Nancy. Also, I can't believe the amount of people here. 3,000 pack a rally for Sanders. We'll talk about the meeting of crowds and a cool-ass new ad the Sanders campaign put out. That's what we got on today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. We finally got our theme song back. Woo! Yeah. It's Iowa Caucus Day, baby. Let's go. We are live today. Live, folks. And this morning, we will be talking about the Iowa Caucuses. But guess what? Tonight, we will be talking about the Iowa Caucuses as well. So, get ready to join us tonight at 9 p.m. We will have guests. We will have a lot of fun. I will be very emotional, screaming, crying, yelling. You'll be too. Get rid of the mainstream news media. Talk to us, okay? Listen to us, SWRN. We will be there tonight, 9 p.m., folks. 9 p.m. Come on. Yeah, 9 p.m. We'll have guests. It'll be very fun. You won't want to miss. We'll be putting on a show. It'll be over on Newsflash. So, same place you're listening to this, you can listen to that, 9 p.m. So come by. Thank you. Anyway, so, yeah, it's historically large Democratic presidential field. It's been narrowed down to 11, with 7 candidates mounting competitive efforts in Iowa. If history and laws of mathematics are any guide, no more than 4 of them will emerge from the caucuses on Monday with a plausible case to be the Democratic nominee against President Trump. So, with that said, let's take a look at who could be those 4. What this means is public polling averages show Senator Bernie Sanders at the top of the field. Joe Biden very, very close behind, folks. It's not over. Be very, very clear about that. If you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, it is not over. Anything could happen, as we will discuss. We'll prove to you later in the show. We will prove that to you. Yeah, with Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, former Mayor Pete Buttigieg in South Bend, Indiana. They're all bundled close behind. Yet there are a few close observers of Iowa politics who feel confident in their prognostications, other than a wide spread belief that Sanders will place first or at worst second. The other 3 leading the candidates could place anywhere from first to fourth without it being a shock. I think the real person with the propensity to really do badly is either Warren, because she's really kind of dropping off the end there. I think Biden and also could maybe take a hit, but maybe stay. No, we don't know what can happen, folks. It's incredible. It's crazy. It's awesome. Oh, it's the Iowa Caucuses. It's confusing. Nobody quite gets how it works. Okay, you know what I should do before we get into each candidate and how the caucuses really, truly, completely work. So pretty much there are a certain number of precincts. Don't ask me how many. I don't know. All around Iowa, the state of Iowa, and you show up to your precinct. It's pretty much where you vote in the state of Iowa. For example, if you go vote at your high school or your auditorium, a local auditorium, like that is where your precinct is going to be. So you come in, and each little place is kind of like it's a little place built out for each candidate, and they will say that if you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, you're going to go over to the Bernie Sanders, you're going to the Bernie Sanders room. You're going to side of the room. You're going to go to the Bernie Sanders corner, and the Bernie Sanders people are going to be like, "Yeah, come over here," and the Elizabeth Warren people are going to be like, "Yeah, Elizabeth Warren, come over here, guys, come support us." So pretty much the way it works is, you get whittled. You whittle down the candidates after that, because if you don't have 15% of the people in the room, then you all your candidates either get to go to the uncommitted section of the room, or you have to go to the another candidate. So that's why second choice candidates are so important, because you can kind of figure that out as you go along. So you can change your mind after your candidate, say you support Tulsi Gabbard doesn't make it across, then you get eliminated. So each each candidate also would have a precinct captain that would tell you about this stuff. So anyway, here should be a little bit better of an explanation.
Many primaries and caucuses to come. The process for caucusing in the Midwestern state is a lot more complicated than a standard primary. Here's a step-by-step guide to how Iowa's Democratic caucuses work. First, the candidates or a representative from the campaign make their case to everyone present at the precinct location. Let's say there are 30 people at this precinct. Democratic caucus goers then move to a candidate's physical designated space in the room to declare their support for that candidate. They also have the option of moving to the uncommitted space. Next, everyone gets counted by the caucus organizers. A candidate's group must amount to at least 15% of the participant total in order to be viable. Some caucus locations have higher thresholds, but none are less than 15%. In this scenario, candidate D is unviable, while the other candidates have reached the threshold. Those left in unviable groups may either join a different viable group, attempt to persuade folks in separate non-viable groups in order to reach the threshold, join the uncommitted group, or choose to sit out. Then comes one more count. After this count, the viable candidates win delegates. More votes means more delegates. And finally, the Iowa Democratic Party calculates the number of state delegate equivalents per candidate at all of the caucus locations. Having the most state delegate equivalents means that candidate wins the most DNC delegates, which determines who the Democratic nominee is. That person has been considered the winner. And new in 2020, Iowa will also make raw vote totals publicly available, meaning if another candidate wins more raw votes, things could get confusing about who can claim to be the winner. This process is vastly different from states with primaries, where voters cast their ballots in secret. A caucus allows for a lot of open, sometimes rowdy discourse on the candidates. This discourse can be valuable in a state like Iowa. According to a Des Moines Register poll, only 40% of likely 2020 Democratic caucus goers said their mind is made up about which candidate they'll support. Winning Iowa doesn't always translate to winning a party nomination.
All right, so anyway, that's talking about just the history of Iowa there. So that kind of gives you an idea of what is going on in Iowa, pretty much explaining it in a bit more of a succinct way than I just did. So yeah, there we go. Let's talk about the candidates now. Joseph Biden, he's the choice of the establishment Democrats since he entered the race. He's going to try and overcome a substandard organization in Iowa and the state's historical skepticism of the next-in-line candidate. His biggest advantage is the idea, put forth by his campaign and his allies and supported by most public polling of swing states, that he would do best against President Trump in a general election. That's pretty much his big appeal, is a big electability appeal that other candidates, specifically Senator Bernie Sanders, would do very, very well to try and shatter, to say, I could beat Trump. And we'll tell you how Bernie's doing that a little bit later on in today's show. Iowa has historically rewarded campaigns that spent months doing the hard work of organizing, creating the sense of excitement, to areas where Biden lags the field. Among the candidates, though, he is a super PAC pouring money into Iowa TV ads backing his candidacy, so breaking his kind of no super PAC pledge, if he ever made one. Biden is also the only candidate who can perhaps survive a poor showing, provided he maintains his strength with black voters, because there are a lot of minority-heavy states coming up. Super Tuesday is certainly coming up, so that is a big deal there. Biden is also the only candidate who can perhaps survive a poor showing, though, so it's going to be a good thing for him. He spent 58 days in Iowa, $4.909 million on television ads. His polling average is 22 in Iowa. His national polling average is 27. Let's talk about Senator Bernie Sanders. He almost won Iowa 4 years ago, and his points to claim would be a seismic victory on Monday night. Leading in some recent polls, Sanders has been drawing big crowds to rallies when he's been able to slip away from the impeachment trial over the last week. And even he's had some of his high-powered surrogates come out and support him. He's popular, especially with working-class voters and young people. His biggest advantage may be that he figures to reach that 15% availability threshold in more caucuses than many of his opponents, giving him more chances to accrue delegates than anybody else. He spent 58 days in Iowa as well. He spent $10.1 million on TV ads. His polling average in Iowa is 22, according to the New York Times. His national polling average is 24. All right, let's talk about Pete Buttigieg. You know who he is. Regardless of where he finishes in Iowa, Buttigieg, the former mayor, has cemented his status as the breakout star of the 2020 presidential campaign. But the question is, how long does that star have to go? He's the youngest mayor, and his support is strongest among Iowa's white-haired set, ironically, particularly in the state's rural areas. With the impeachment trial confining senators to Washington on weekdays, Buttigieg has had an opportunity to be the only candidate on the ground in a lot of places on his final barnstorming tour. He's also been aggressive in attacking his rivals, announcing Biden and Sanders by name in the last few days. So, yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't get a lot of play, but the fact is he is most likely, in all likelihood, not going to win. He has a lot riding on a strong Iowa finish, without one, he has less of a chance to do well in the subsequent states. So, Elizabeth Warren, there was a time this fall when Elizabeth Warren was the Iowa frontrunner. She led the field in the Des Moines Register September poll, but then got eclipsed first by Buttigieg and then by Sanders. Some of her crowds in the final weeks were a bit smaller. Polls have shown her slipping, with some reporters doubtful that she'd even have the best chances to defeat President Trump, even though she does try and say that in a lot of ads. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things she screwed up in this campaign. Oh, well. Sorry. She spent 56 days in Iowa, $6.14 million on TV ads. Her polling average in Iowa is 15, just barely above that magic number, the 15% viability threshold. Amy Klobuchar, did you hear she's from Minnesota? Just the state just 2 Iowas north. She's Minnesota nice, folks, throwing the binders at her staff. And by the way, we won't do it because we just don't have the time, but go ahead and check out that video with Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday, talking about how the fact she maybe knowingly wrongfully sentenced a 16-year-old black kid to life because she wanted to look tough on crime. Like, it's insane. Some of the stuff that she's been reported on. There are people in her own state calling her to suspend her campaign, prominent chapters of the NAACP there. So that's a very, very big deal. So anyway, this Senator Amy Klobuchar's bet is that Iowans will pick someone who stresses the just like them argument and searching for a moderate candidate who can carry the Midwest, but she's never broken double digits, and Iowa's polling leaving her well behind the top 4 candidates. Klobuchar would declare an Iowa victory if she sneaks into the top 4, especially if she winds up ahead of Biden and Warren. Her polling average, though, was 8, so she would need a little bit of a boost to do that. But the thing is, she could very well, in the way that we talked about earlier, she could have an impact on the race depending on where her supporters go, if/when she doesn't make the viability threshold. All right, so let's talk about Andrew Yang here, the outsider's outsider. He's used his pitch for a universal basic income in the perils of automation to keep himself in the race longer than far more established and famous politicians. He spent the most days in Iowa of any remaining candidate, with 71, even though he's operated with far less media attention. His supporters skew male more than anybody else in the field and are likely to shift to Bernie Sanders or just go home in precincts where Yang fails to meet the 15% viability threshold. Although Yang pretty much encouraged a lot of his supporters to go to Sanders, so shout out to Yang for that. Yang gang, baby. Let's go. Because they kind of have the same kind of basic ideas. But anyway, Tom Steyer, since joining the race back in July, Steyer has used his billions to blanket the Iowa TV airwaves for months. After spending 2 years pushing for impeaching President Trump, he's focused his presidential campaign on protecting the environment. Iowa is not his strongest state. His polling numbers are much better in Nevada and South Carolina because he's widely known because of his pre-campaign work to turn out the Democratic vote in the state's college towns, and also he's been spending a hell of a lot of money there as well. He polls at 3% in Iowa. Some of these other candidates here, they could be significant. Tulsi Gabbard invested in billboards all over the state. Michael Bennett moved most of his resources from Iowa to New Hampshire. Deval Patrick visited Iowa once and hasn't been back. Oh, God. Michael Bloomberg is skipping the first 4 states and has focused his TV advertising on other states. So Tulsi and Yang could give some support for Bernie Sanders. So that'll be interesting.